Hello everyone. In this video I'm going to talk about nested for loops in C++. So I created this short program to demonstrate and show you how to do it. So I'll start at the top. We have IOStream library, and then I included the IOmanip library so that I can set widths for fields. So this is basically going to be a multiplication table. So I created in a way to hopefully make it a little bit more visual, so x and y values. So if you're familiar with graphs, x values run left and right, y values run up and down. So we're going to have a 10 by 10 times table here. Make this wider. Okay. So for our outer for loop, this will determine how many rows we are going to print. So we need this one on the outside basically because this one is going to let us know how far down we're going to go before we stop. So the outer for loop will create our rows. The inner for loop will create our columns. So let's start with this outer for loop. So when the computer reads this, it says for the integer y equals 1, when y is less than or equal to the y maximum of 10, this inside executes. Everything inside this for loop will execute as long as this statement here is true. Okay, so for our first row, y is 1, it's less than the y max, so it goes to our next inside for loop. So for the next for loop, we have the integer x equals 1, and the computer asks, is x less than or equal to the x max? So is 1 less than or equal to 10? When the computer determines that this statement in the middle here is true, then it executes what's inside this for loop. So it outputs a set width of 10, and then it multiplies x times y. So in the very first row, first column, we get y is 1, x is 1. And multiply the two together, we get a value of 1. Okay, so we can see also that once this executes, that the line doesn't end. The line doesn't end until we exit this inner for loop. Then we get an end line here. So let's run this program and you can see what I'm talking about. So again, this is the first thing that it prints out, 1 times 1 with the value of 1. So once this line, or once this space has been printed, which is basically this from here to here, once this has been printed, x is incremented by 1. So x becomes 2. So we went from being, x went from being 1 to 2. So now the computer verifies again. Is x less than or equal to the x max? Is x, or is 2 less than or equal to 10? This is true. So the computer executes what's in this inner for loop again. So it executes our set width and then x times y. So in this position, x is 2, y is still 1. So for this whole row up here, y is 1. So this inner loop repeats until this statement here is no longer valid. So once we get to the point where, say on this last spot here, this is y is 1, x is 10. So 1 times 10 is this value here, 10. So once this inner loop is executed and 10 is incremented by 1, x is incremented by 1, so x becomes 11. So the computer asks, is x less than or equal to the x max? Is 11 less than or equal to 10? This becomes false. So once the computer says or determines that this statement here is false, it exits the for loop. So once it exits the for loop, it goes outside of these brackets, and then it reads this line here, and it ends the line. So that's why it stops after this 10, because of this end line here. So once it ends the line, then it comes back to our for loop, and it increments y by 1. So y goes from being 1 to being 2. And then it verifies, the computer verifies this inner statement. Is 2 less than or equal to the y max of 10? And this computer says, yeah, that's true. So once that is determined to be true, then it goes through this inner for loop. It executes what's in here. So when when y is 2, x becomes 1 again. Computer asks, is 1 less than or equal to the x max? True. It executes this line here. So we get 2 times x, or 2 times 1. And then we get the value of 2. So when it goes up to the next one, y is 2 for this whole line here. So it's 2 times 2. X is 2, y is 2. In this spot, x is 3, y is 2. In this spot, x is 4, y is 2. And it goes on and on. So this continues to execute as long as x is less than or equal to the x max. So once x reaches a position, once we've incremented x by 1 to the point where x is now greater than the x max, it exits this for loop, ends the line, and then goes back into the outside for loop. So when it gets back to this for loop, y is incremented again by 1, so y grows another, it gets bigger. So we get to the point where y becomes 10. So is 10 less than or equal to the y max? Yes, it's equal to the y max, so this is true. So when the computer determines this is true, then it executes this again. And this inner for loop creates these values. Boom, boom, boom. All the way to, we get to the point where we get 10 times 10. X is 10, y is 10. And it prints out 100. So once x is 10, y is 10, it prints this out. X is then incremented again by 1, so x becomes 11. When x is 11, the computer asks, is 11 less than or equal to the x max of 10? This becomes false. Once this is false, it exits the for loop and it ends the line here, and then it comes back to the outer for loop. So it comes back to here and it increments y again by 1. So y becomes 11. After this, y becomes 11, and then the computer asks, is 11 less than or equal to the y max? This becomes false. When this is false, the computer exits this whole for loop, and then we get the return 0 on the computer ends. So the nice thing about having this also is that we can change these values and make this table however big we want it to be. We can do a 5 by 5. We get 5 times 5, 25 here. We can do a 8 by 7. And instead of having to change a bunch of code, all we need to do is change these two values and we can create whatever size timetable we want. All right, so that's all I got. Thank you.